We're live in Oxford, Mississippi, with a special edition of Morning Joe.
Now, if we're in Oxford, Mississippi, why is Eddie Cloud wearing a crimson tie and pants?
He loves Alabama.
Only the Lord knows.
Hey, if you run for office, we got that on camera.
It's all right.
Okay.
It's okay, Eddie.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you for being
Mom.
with us.
Sorry.
Joining us now, Republican candidate in Mississippi's special election, the U.S. Senate, State Senator Chris McDaniel. Thank you very much.
Chris, thanks for being with us. So we just interviewed Haley Barbour, and I said the one thing is no matter how disruptive Donald Trump's been to the Republican Party, there are a couple states, Mississippi and South Carolina, where the GOP establishment still holds firm.
Yeah.
And you would think normally, with your positions and your approach on the campaign trail, that Donald Trump would endorse you. But he's not. He's endorsing your opponent, and you got Haley and everybody else lined up. I'm curious in 2018.
Right.
Does that actually help you at the end that the establishment's against you?
They've been against me for some time. That's the thing. You know, we ran this race in 2014, and everyone counted us out. The establishment spent a whole lot of money to stop us, and we were successful in so many ways. So we're accustomed to the establishment standing against us. We don't see that as an issue. Our point is this. We are principled conservatives, and we have been for some time. Our position is we have to learn to fight. Our party has not been the courageous party that I grew up in. Look, I cut my teeth with Reagan, and before that, I was a Goldwater guy. Now, granted, I wasn't alive when Goldwater was president, but I thought his philosophy, especially as articulated in the Conscience of a Conservative, was one of the most beautiful things I'd read. And then I went back to Taft, and I noticed his concept of what Republicans should be. My concern is my party has moved away from those traditions, and we're just trying to reimpose those traditions again. We're trying to save the platform. The establishment doesn't seem so inclined to save the platform. They seem to be inclined to work with the donor class and the lobbying class, anything for the acquisition of power. We're here to stop the establishment of both sides of the equation.
Right. So this obviously can be a really critical race.
Yes, sir.
You could have a split, the Senate split right down the middle, and then a runoff afterwards. You think you're going to be in that runoff? And if so, who do you think you're going to be running against?
That's a good question. There's no question. I do believe I'll be in the runoff. You know, if you look back at 2014, we're on the same path we were then. And everybody counted us out. A month to go, we're down 27 points. I'm told I'll get 15% tops, but we knew the mood of the people. I'm not stuck in a bubble like some in D.C., like some in Jackson. I'm out there among the counties, among the people. We spend time in co-ops and convenience stores. We're talking to people every day. We know the anger is real.
What are they telling you?
Oh, they're fired up. They're more angry now than they were in 2014. They feel like, and I agree with this, I think Mitch McConnell is a big part of the problem. I think he's obstructing Trump's agenda, and he's utilizing that obstruction to get his way with Trump, with endorsements and otherwise. My position is Mitch has to be replaced. But not only Mitch. I believe strongly that Mitch needs a whole lot of new blood in Washington, D.C. So we find ourselves in this very strange position. We're trying to implement change against a very powerful system that's not really prone to changing. But I believe change is necessary to save this country.
So what issues are you? We had a sort of it wasn't a real focus group, the types in which Elise runs, but we had a group get together and talk about the issues that matter to them. One that we heard yesterday was Supreme Court justices. Very important to the Trump supporters and the Republicans. Is that one of the top issues that you're hearing? What are you hearing out there?
There's a combination. I think for Mississippi, we desperately want the wall built on the southern border. We want no amnesty, and I can pretty much say most Republicans would agree with that. The problem we've got, once again, is Mitch McConnell trying to forego spending on the wall until after the midterms. Joe, you know what that means. That's Washington speak for. He has no intention of spending money on the wall. We have control of the apparatus. We have the Senate, we have the House, we have the executive. It's time to fund the wall, and Mississippi expects that. And yes, the Supreme Court justices, outstanding. I think originalists for the most part, and we're very pleased that Trump appointed those Supreme Court justices.
So one thing that I have a question about, though, you were talking about balancing the budget, which clearly we have to do. It's just out of control, $20 trillion, and it just keeps getting bigger. So how do you propose paying for the wall?
Well, a couple of ways. First of all, we have about $51 billion in foreign aid that we give to countries who, for the most part, don't like us very much. There's money to be saved there. Also, we know there's about $110 billion in duplicative services. That is, we have agencies in D.C. that are duplicating services other agencies are supposed to be doing. There's money to be found there. The wall is going to cost about $25 billion. That's more than worth the investment to stem the bleeding we see with public resources because of illegal immigration. The wall needs to be built right now.
So, Senator, I want to ask you how disappointed disappointed you were when Donald Trump, President Trump, a guy who, as Joe said, on paper lines up well with you, when he endorsed your opponent in this race. He was supposed to do an event today, a big event in Jackson. He postponed that. Were you surprised and disappointed when the president did not endorse you?
Well, now, in fairness, we still have the lead there, you understand. I want to talk about this. He endorsed me 3 times in 2014.
But not this time.
So far, he's only endorsed her once. I'm up 3-1. All right, 3-1. So,
but this is the one you need today.
I agree. Here's the thing. I like President Trump. I love what he's doing for the country. I love the tax cuts. I love the judges. I love the regulatory reform that he's implemented. The economy is improving as the result. What we have to do now is to find people that can stand with him so he doesn't have to beg from Mitch McConnell. Now, here's the thing. People
Senator,
say,
can I just stop you right there? Because when you say the president's begging Mitch McConnell and you say he looks weak next to Mitch McConnell.
I'm not saying that.
Isn't that what you're suggesting?
I am not.
That he's getting rolled by Mitch McConnell, the president of the United States?
I'm suggesting that there's no other explanation as to why the president would have endorsed the likes of Mitt Romney unless there's some game in play. Mitt Romney was hateful to the president. John McCain was, God bless his soul. And so was Paul Ryan. But all 3 times Trump endorsed. In other words, it appears there's something in play. It appears the establishment has a game in play there. Now, Trump is strong, but he also needs 51 votes in the Senate. And he's trying to do the best he can to govern with a slim majority in the Senate. We get that. But I tell you this, I think ultimately he's going to be much more pleased with conservatives that will actually fight for 11 as opposed to those that will just lay down and take shots.
But I guess the argument for Mitch McConnell then is we need to endorse Cindy Hyde-Smith because if you are the nominee, then Mike Espy is going to win. How does that make you feel?
It's nonsense. That may be his argument. But that may be his argument. Mitch McConnell's always going to say things that make no sense. That's the establishment's way. Consider this. We're sitting in a state now that's gone Republican for as long as we can remember. It's a very conservative, very red state. Mr. Espy might be a nice guy, but he was a Clinton appointee. Strike 1. Let's just face it. He was a Clinton appointee just after Hillary was defeated in this state. Strike 2 is he had the misfortune of being indicted while in office, and he had to step down. I want to be clear. Mississippi is not going to send a Democrat to the U.S. Senate. They're just not. Lucian Smith, our state party director, said that just a few days ago. The Democrats can think they can win this state, and we hope they do. We hope they pour millions into this state because they're going to put money here they should be spending somewhere else, and we're going to beat them either way.
Now, 38% of Mississippi is black.
Yes, sir.
I'm from Moss Point. If you're elected to the U.S. Senate, you're supposed to represent the whole state.
Yes, sir.
Your position around the Confederate flag, your position around hip-hop as the source of gun violence, your position around Robert E. Lee. I can go on and on and on.
Please do.
How do you convince black folk in this state that you're not a danger to them?
The story that you talked about, the hip-hop connection to violence, that was a study from Berkeley. Berkeley's not exactly a conservative institution, but it did link hip-hop to violence. That's Berkeley, not me. And I was just cited that on the radio show. That's the first thing. Number 2, our flag has been here an awfully long time. In 2001, 65% of Mississippians chose to keep that flag. Now, the thing about flags, like any symbol, is they are subject to different interpretations. But if 65% of the people have voted to keep that flag, we should respect their wishes. The flag can be offensive to some. I recognize that. But almost all symbols are offensive to someone. At some point, the majority has to control that decision. That's exactly what we did. So I'm going to stand with the majority in that instance. Now, if the people of Mississippi want to start another referendum and want to change it, that's the direct democracy concept they like to push sometimes. Okay. But I'm going to stand for that flag because the people have stood for it.
So how would you speak to that 38%? Those 38% of this state, what would you say to them?
I'm going to ask them after 100 years of relying on big government to save you, where are you today? After 100 years of begging for federal government scraps, where are you today? We've been dead last for 100 years. 100 years. I mean the state of Mississippi. I'm talking about the state of Mississippi. We've been dead last for 100 years. And what happens is, if we keep depending on that economic model, we're always going to stay last. Our state depends heavily on federal funds, right? Because of that, we're not able to create the prosperous environment we need to grow.
So how do you do that? How do you move Mississippi up in categories, whether it's education or health care? How do you do that as a senator?
It's a combination of several ways. First of all, from a culture standpoint, we have to enforce the importance of education. We don't talk about education enough. as people. My father was a professor. I believe strongly in that. And every Mississippian should have a chance to get a good education and a good job. That went back to my earlier point. If we're not depending on the federal government so much for federal monies, and we create an environment for economic prosperity, every Mississippian, every one of us can have jobs for the future. And what I would say to that 38%, I would say the candidate I am is a candidate that wants to expand your liberty, who wants to give you opportunity, who wants to break out of the old ways the state's always done business. And if we break out of those old ways, there will be opportunity. But we can't keep doing it the same old way and expect different results. That's what I would suggest.
So I would argue, though, that getting rid of the Mississippi state flag, that it actually attracts business. Because you've seen a lot of states and how it's been harmful, these symbols that don't really matter for much, but it keeps us from getting a new car plant. So I personally would care more about economic prosperity than symbolism.
Well, here's the thing, though. I've served.
By the way, Elisa's mother's in the audience, so she's leading the cheering section.
Right.
So
I understand.
You could have invited your family.
Well, here's
context.
And here's the answer to that. We hear that argument from time to time. I've been serving in the state senate now 11 years. We talk to industry and business all the time. Not one that I've seen has backed out because of the state flag. If you can name one, I'll be happy to speak with them. But we've had this conversation. If we create the right economic environment for this state, for everybody, they will come. And we can do that. And that was the point I was making earlier. Just change the old economic models. Look a different direction. Find ways to create prosperity by government reform. One good way would be to reduce income taxes in this state. You notice Tennessee has no state income tax. Texas, no state income tax. Florida, no state income tax. Businesses will rush to those places because it's friendly for business entrepreneurs. Mississippi should experiment with that. That's what I'm referencing.
All right.
State Senator Chris McDaniel, thank you very much for being on
Thanks
the
so
show.
much for coming. We appreciate it.
And up next, we'll talk to a Democrat running in Mississippi's other Senate race, where he is trying to unseat incumbent Senator Roger Wicker. David Barry is going to speak it right here on The Morning Show.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.